Welcome back for part 3 of square and cube roots. Today we're going to be working with estimating irrational numbers. And just a real quick review, a rational number is any number that can be written as a ratio in the form of a over b, where a and b are integers and b is not 0. We have a couple examples of rational numbers are 6 and 5/10. Because 6 is an integer, and 5/10 can be written in fraction form of 1/2. Also, rational numbers can be terminating decimals, where 5/10 it stops, it terminates, it has a finite number of digits. Another way would be if it was a repeating decimal, like if I had 1/3, it would be a decimal or digits that are repeating indefinitely, so it would be 0.3333 and continue on. An irrational number are numbers that are not rational. It cannot be written in the form of a over b, and the decimals would be non-terminating and non-repeating. Okay? So when we come in and we look at these, we're going to be estimating when they are not perfect squares. And we know from our experience that this section right here, the product of these squares are the perfect squares. And 2 is not in here, is it? So 2 is not here. So 2 is not a perfect square. It is irrational. We can estimate them. We can't come exact, but we can get pretty close. If we find 2 consecutive perfect squares that 2 fits between, we can use that to find our perfect, our possible answer, or approximately what the answer would be. So if I were to look for 2 in my perfect squares, I know that it would fit right here between the 1 and the 4. So 2 is greater than 1, but less than 4. Now I can take the square root of each. So the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. So we know that it's going to be between 1 and 2 on the number line. Now we can post it on here, and we can see that it would be between 1 and 2, and we can say it's approximately 1 and 5/10 or 1 1/2, because it looks like it might go about there. We could find a closer estimate, and by doing that we can test some of the numbers between, some of the decimals between 1 and 2, and some that they are chose to try are 1 3/10 squared. And if I take 1 3/10 and square it, I get 1 69/100. If I take 1 4/10 and square that, I get 1 96/100. And if I take 1 5/10 and square it, I get 2 25/100. Okay? Now, the question they have is the square root of 2 between 1 3/10 and 1 4/10. And I would say no, because 2 is larger than 1 96/100. Then they want to know, would it be between 1 4/10 and 1 5/10? And I would say yes, because 2 is greater than 1 96/100, but less than 2 25/100. Okay? So if I had to be closest to the possible answer, I would say that it would be 1 4/10. Okay? So I would say it's probably closer to this point right here on the number line. Okay? We're going to practice some of these. Our first one that we have here is the square root of 5, and we know that 5 is not a perfect square. If I look here, I don't see a 5 as one of my perfect squares. 5 does fit between 4 and 9. So I'm going to say that 5 is greater than 4, but less than 9. And then I'm going to square root those. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. So I'm going to say that it's going to be between 2 and 3 on a number line. Now I have to decide what's going to be the closest. So if I take, let's do 2.5, so 2.5, and I square it. That's going to give me 6 25/100. That's kind of large, isn't it? Because 5 would be quite a bit smaller, so I know I want to go smaller. So let's try 2 2/10 squared. So 2 2/10 squared. That gives me 4 84/100. And if I go up just to the next, which would be 2 3/10, and square it, I would get 5 29/100. So the one that's closest without going over is the 2 2/10. So it's going to be approximately 2 2/10. We can do the same thing with the the square root of 3. Is 3 a perfect square? Nope. So when I'm working on it, 3 would be between 1 and 4. So 1 would be less than 3, and 3 is less than 4. Square root these would be 1 and 2. So it's going to be between 1 and 2. So if we start with 1 5/10 and square that, I get 2 25/100. I know that 2 25/100 is less than 3, so I'm going to go up from here. So I'm going to try 1 6/10 squared, and I get 2 56/100. If I go up one more, 1 7/10 and square that, I get 2 89/100. It's getting closer. Let's try 1 8/10. And I get 3 24/100. So it's going to be approximately, this one's less than 3, this one goes over 3, so it's approximately 1 7/10. Now you try the square root of 10 and see what you come up with. If you have any questions, please make sure you talk to your teacher.